Welcome to this session of Material Requirement Planning, MRP, once again. We have been talking about the material requirement planning. We have studied that in material requirement planning there are three components. One is the master production schedule, second is the bill of material, and the third is the inventory file or the inventory record file. And we have seen how the product structure is constituted, how we can calculate the amount of each component, each small component, whether it is a nut, bolt, it's a pin, it's small screws, it is calculated very precisely so that there is no overstocks and we can have proper inventory control systems, we can have proper optimization systems in our organizations. So there is a lot of logic in material planning. Why? Because once the quantity of required material is established, the logic starts examining a series of questions to ensure that the material is available when required. So it ensures that there are no stockouts in your production systems and there are no overstocking also in your production system. So the first step in material planning is to check your stocks to see whether sufficient material is available or not. If the answer is yes, then the situation is fine. And then the planner has to think of next item. Okay, this item stock is there. But however, if the answer is no, the material is not there. So one has to order that material. And then here also the question arises, sufficient quantity has been ordered or not. So in the earlier sessions we have been talking about economic order quantity. If you order more quantity, again there will be overstocking. If you order less quantity, then again you will be short of the inventories and the production will come to a standstill. So once you order the material, now in material department will see whether the material is arriving on scheduled time or not. If the material is arriving at the scheduled time, then it is fine. If material is not arriving at the scheduled time, then you have to again go back to your master production schedule, you have to reschedule the delivery, you have to replan your orders. Or you have to work with your suppliers, with your vendors, what is the problem, that why the material is not coming in time. So if the material is arriving on scheduled time, you have to consider next item. If it is possible to change the production schedule, then adjust the production schedule. If it is not possible to change the production schedule, then probably the material has to be arranged from some other alternate source. You have to outsource the material. So the same thing I will try to show you through this block diagram, through this flow diagram on the slide. So at the top you are seeing that quantity of material is required. So it's a flow diagram, it's like a software. You check whether the required quantity is there or not. Yes, then consider next item. No, then you have to again ask the question if sufficient quantity is ordered. If yes, then go for the next item. If no, then replan your orders. So like this you can see this slide. So there are various permutations and combinations which I have just discussed over there. So now we will be talking about another concept which is called MRP. This is also MRP, but this is manufacturing resource planning. Let us see from the slide. This is MRP 2 because material requirement planning is also MRP. And this is also MRP, so we call it MRP2. So I will show you this on the slide, this definition. What is manufacturing resource planning? It refers to the strategic production planning through the use of the simulation capabilities. It is originally developed for the materials order. Planning and production are integrated with MRP. Next slide we are seeing. It is a totally company system in which functional group interact and make joint decisions. It includes monitoring inventory level, and workforce levels. So basically MRP2, now material requirement planning gives you the list of the materials required, whereas manufacturing resource planning gives you all the resources required for the production. For example, for production you require materials. You also want to know how many of human resources are required, how much of staff is required, how much of equipment are required, plant and machinery is required, what kind of money is required, what kind of finance is required, what kind of processes are required, what kind of logistic support, transportation, warehouses are required. So manufacturing resource planning calculates all these for you. So based on the master production plan, the requirement of various resources for manufacturing are worked out through this software. So this is another software. So this is commonly popular as MRP2. So materials requirement planning is MRP. Some people call it MRP1 or just MRP, and manufacturing resource planning is MRP2. So now we have another concept which is given by Japanese to the world. This is known as JIT systems or just-in-time systems. Now just-in-time systems is a modified form of MRP and MRP2. It tells you that why you should have so much of inventories. Your MRP and MRP2 system should be synchronized in such a manner that the materials should arrive when they are loaded on the machines. So they should be arriving just in time. Name says that they should be arriving a few hours before or a few days before when it is required to be processed. So we can say overall that just in time is the process of receiving the material, transforming them into parts, converting the material into sub-assemblies, then into assemblies and the finished products for sale. So broadly in just-in-time systems, we try to match the product supply with the market demand. So overall we try to reduce the working capital to the minimum so that the capital is not tied away in your inventories, because unnecessarily when there are a lot of inventories, you need warehouses, you need a lot of capital for your stocks. And then over a period of time, if inventories are very high, there can be a risk of obsolescence of the inventories. You have to have staff to maintain those inventories. Some inventories can expire because some inventories have got an expiry date. So just-in-time systems, you will see the advantages from the slides. Inventory levels are reduced and buffer stocks are also reduced. Additional stock buying is not required. Employees are motivated and better quality of the goods are produced. So as we said that the aim is to reduce the inventory levels. So therefore, it is easier said than done. In just-in-time systems, you have to coordinate with your suppliers. And many times the suppliers people are stationed at the principal's manufacturing site. They know your production schedule and they have to synchronize, the vendor has to synchronize its own production schedule with the production schedule of the principal company. And needless to say that the quality also has to be matched according to the principal's requirement. Once they know the schedule, they have to gear up their schedules so that the material should not be arriving very early also. The material should not be arriving late also. They should factor in the transportation time, They should factor in any contingencies also in between, and then accordingly they have to deliver the material so that the production schedule of the principal company is not hampered in any way. So, a lot of motivation is required from the supplier side. They have to be involved with the principal company. They also have to be involved in their, say, improvement procedures, in their quality control procedures, in their quality circles procedures. So, for example, in our last session, we had talked about economic order quantity. We had talked about various costs like ordering costs. Now, ordering costs are also reduced when you follow this just-in-time systems. Ordering cost, as we had studied in our last session, stationery costs, clerical and processing costs, salaries, rentals, postage, processing of bills, receiving inspection notes, documentation, processing of bills, these are all ordering costs. So, when you have tie-up with your suppliers, you don't have to order the materials each and every time. So, definitely your ordering costs are reduced because you have got tie-up with your suppliers, and suppliers are supplying on regular basis to you because they are following the just-in-time systems. Then we had talked about the holding costs or carrying costs. When inventories are minimum, these days some modern industries are also following zero inventory model, no inventory model. So, definitely the carrying cost will be very less because you don't need storage space, no taxes on warehousing, no insurance costs, no deterioration and obsolescence chances. So, those costs are also not there. Material handling cost also will be minimum or bare minimum. Maintenance cost also will be less because you have to maintain the inventories also. You have to maintain your material handling equipments. So, those costs also will be reduced. And then of course, the quality control department also has to control the inventories. They have to control the quality so that the quality do not get deteriorated with the passage of time. So, those quality control costs also will be less because you have got tie-up with your suppliers, and this is the responsibility of your suppliers to maintain the quality control. In between, as and when required, the principal's company can visit the vendors, the suppliers' premises to ensure that the quality is being maintained as per our standards. But regular quality checks may not be required, day-to-day checks may not be required. So, those costs are reduced. Then if you have proper coordination, just-in-time systems require accurate, precise coordination with your suppliers. So, when you have got such kind of coordination, and definitely you are receiving the products at the right time at your premises, then stock out probability is also not there. So, there will be no chances that your materials are out of stock. So, stock out costs are also not there because when the material is not there, that is stock outs are there, then you lose business, you lose profit, you lose market goodwill, ultimately you lose market. So, those costs are not there if proper just-in-time systems are implemented in the organizations. And then additional expenditure due to urgency of purchases will not be there, loss of labor hours will not be there, additional transportation charges will not be there. So, just-in-time system, we can say it's both a philosophy and a set of methods for manufacturing. JIT also involves, JIT does not come very simply. You have to have waste reduction systems in your manufacturing units. You have to have system of adding value at each process. You have to implement total quality control, and you have to have a devotion towards your customer. So, you can say that JIT is a system where the goal is to optimize the processes and procedures by continuously pursuing waste reduction. So we will see from this slide, JIT believes that there are 7 wastes in the organization. The first waste is overproduction, second waste is waste of waiting, third is transportation, fourth is processing, fifth is stocks and inventory, that is extra stocks and inventory, sixth waste of motion, and seventh defective poor quality products. So in overproduction, you will see from the slide, what is overproduction waste? It is reduced setup time, synchronized time and quantity between processes, compacting layout, make only what is needed now, waiting, balance uneven loads, synchronize. So these are the solutions for them. So overproduction, JIT believes that if you overproduce, it's a waste. So again, if you draw an analogy, I have a habit of giving you very simple examples from your day-to-day life. So if you see from your household kitchens, if you cook extra than what is required, isn't it a waste? So similarly, if you adopt the same analogy in your manufacturing systems, if you are overproducing and it is not required in the market, so it's a waste. So what is the solution? The solution is that you have to have compacting layout, you have to reduce setup time, you have to synchronize time and quantity. Then there is a waste of waiting. In the earlier sessions, we have talked in operations management that, for example, there is one process which is having the capacity of 200 tons. There is a second process which is having a capacity of 150 tons. So if you produce some material sub-assemblies of 200 tons, and then the second process is of 150 tons, so you have made 50 tons more. So it will be waiting, because you can make only 150 tons, and the third process of 100 tons. So your processes are not balanced. So you have to balance uneven loads, you have to synchronize your workflow within the factory, you have to use flexible manufacturing systems. So there will be no waiting. Then because of that, there is a lot of transportation. If the proper layout is not there, unnecessary material is traveling zigzag manner from one process to the other process, so a lot of material handling is required, so that is also a waste. Then the fourth waste, we talked about waste of processing. So unnecessarily in some products, unnecessary processes are there. So you have to reduce process, you have to combine 2 or 3 processes into one processes. And you don't have to have extra stocks or inventories. Try to reduce your stocks. Try to think that, for example, again I will give you a very simple example. Gone are the days when people used to live in big houses and there used to be stores, and they used to store the material, the wheat, for say 1 year, other materials, say pulses and all. Today you live in compact homes, so there are no kitchen stores as such. So you have to limit your quantities of each item required in the kitchen. So think from that mindset. Even in industries, so you have big spaces, but you can use them for other purposes. Why to use those warehouses spaces for unnecessary inventories? So for that you have to reduce your load times, you have to reduce other wastes. Then there is unnecessary waste of motion. Unnecessary machine is running and there is no product loaded on the machine, and unnecessary motions are there. A worker is also moving from one part to the other place, from one workshop to the other workshop. So there are time studies, there are motion studies. So there are work studies which decide that unnecessary motion of the workers is not there. Unnecessary motions of machines are not there. So you have to design your machines, your systems ergonomically. And then you produce defective products, poor quality products. So that is also waste on the system. So if you want to implement JIT in your organization, you have to work on all these wastes. Now, we have tried to compare on this slide. We will show you that JIT purchasing versus traditional purchasing. Suppose you want to purchase lot size. In JIT purchasing, if you are implementing JIT in your systems, there are small lots with frequent purchasing. In traditional purchasing, there are large lots with less frequent deliveries. With respect to selecting suppliers, in JIT purchasing, there is a single source in nearby area with a long-term contract. Whereas in traditional purchasing, there are multiple sources and short-term contracts. How do you evaluate the suppliers? In JIT purchasing, there is 0% of defect acceptance. Whereas in traditional purchasing, you say, okay, 2% reject acceptability will be there. Then further in JIT purchasing, how do you work on receiving inspection? In JIT purchasing, you illuminate. There is no need for receiving inspection. Whereas in traditional purchasing, the buyer is responsible for counting, inspection. How do you do the negotiation and bidding process? In JIT purchasing, you focus on quality and fair price, where in traditional purchasing, you focus on lowest price. So, you have seen the comparison, So, JIT believes in long-term contracts with the suppliers. JIT believes that it is the responsibility of the suppliers for the quality and fair price. You don't have to work on day-to-day inspections, etc. Then further we will see with respect to the mode of transportation. In JIT purchasing, on-time delivery, that is delivery schedule left to the buyer. Whereas in traditional purchasing, the delivery schedule is left to the suppliers and there is always concern of cost. With respect to product specification, in JIT purchasing, it is loose. For example, the suppliers themselves innovate their products and buyer relies more on performance specifications than on product specification. Whereas in traditional purchasing, it is rigid specifications. Then with respect to paperwork, in JIT purchasing, the paperwork is less because delivery time and quantity level can be changed by telephone calls only. Whereas in traditional purchasing, there is more paperwork. With respect to packaging, in JIT purchasing, there are small standard containers, whereas in traditional purchasing, there are big size lots. So, therefore, we have seen, how this compares with the traditional systems of working. So, JIT has altogether different concepts. JIT works on efficiencies. JIT works on relying on the suppliers. JIT works with close coordination with your suppliers. So, proper supply chain management is required to implement JIT in your systems. So, JIT involves, it's a further advanced version of MRP 1, MRP 2, economic order quantity systems, reorder systems. So, JIT is an advanced form wherein all these systems are also used, but it has put the onus on maintaining the quality on your suppliers. So, just-in-time systems, I would say, has been followed by many large industries these days. Earlier it was said that in India it is not possible because India has a lot of other complexities and complications. There are traffic on roads, there are electricity problems. So, even if you decide to make the material within the scheduled time, there could be some power cuts, there could be some obstacles on the road, there could be transportation and logistic problems. However, in recent years, the manufacturing systems have improved a lot, the infrastructure systems in India have improved a lot, the power situations have improved. Government has introduced production linked incentive systems to the industries, and JIT systems are being implemented in the country, and it has been proved that they are quite successful in our country. So, overall we have talked about material requirement planning, we have talked about manufacturing resource planning, We have talked about just-in-time systems. So I hope the audience will have got good insights into all these concepts, and again we will suggest them to read good textbooks on these topics and do some numerical problems on these topics to have a fair understanding of them. So thank you so much.